What is going on, guys? So this week I am going to be working on the Rx8 and just going to give you a quick rundown of the tools that you need to do a spark plug and wire change. Not doing the coils yet. Last week, if you watched my last video, I drained the fuel, which I showed you how to do that by kind of jumping the fuse box. So there's no gas in there anymore. It's been sitting a while. So I ordered spark plugs, wires, finally got those in. Gonna be changing those out, showing you guys how to do that. I know there's a lot of how-to videos out there already on how to do that for an Rx8, but I'm gonna try to make it a little bit more complete and a little bit quicker. All right, so step one, obviously order the, if you're gonna do a wire change, you wanna order the wires. For 2004 2008, I'm sure it's probably the same for a Series 2 Rx8, but I can't give you 100% certainty if that's the case. But the part number that I have here for my 2004 is RCZE81. And for the plugs, so you need 2 leading and 2 trailing plugs. All right, so here's what I use to take these plugs out. The only thing that you need is a screwdriver just to remove the access cover to get to the plugs in the wheelhouse area, just a ratchet. The most important tool that we need is a 13/16 socket, and then a couple various extensions. I'm sure you guys, once you get down there, you can figure out what exactly you need, but this is what worked for me, and I'll just pass it along to what may work for you as well. Okay, so the first step, or the second step now after you order the plugs and the wires, if you're doing a wire change, is to jack up the car. So next we're gonna take the wheel off on the driver's side front, and then we'll be able to get access to where the plugs are gonna be. All right, so the wheel is now off. Looking in the driver's side wheel well, this is where your screwdriver comes in place, or in handy. So there was a cover right here, and just take some Phillips head screws, or they're clips. You just turn them, and they pop out. So set that aside, and then here's what it looks like. Like I was saying, there is 2 trailing plugs and 2 leading plugs. You can see them designated on each rotor housing. So in each rotor housing, there's a trailing and a leading. So we have the front on the left, and then the rear ones we have as well. All right, so I'm not gonna film how to take these out. The only one that is tricky and why you need these extensions is the top left plug. So it's the trailing plug on the front of the car nearest towards the radiator. So top left corner, put all 3 of these extensions together, and then you'll get room to actually be able to get that 13/16 deep well on there, and then you could just spin it right off. All right, let me take the rest of these plugs back out, and I'll show you what they all look like. This is the front of the car. This is the housing, rotor housing 1, rotor housing 2. So housing 2 would be more towards the rear. So that's how I just laid it out, just to show you guys what they look like. The leading plugs, don't get these mixed up, but they do have part numbers on them. So they have the L for leading, and then there's 2 leadings on the bottom of each housing, 2 trailings on the top, and same thing goes for the trailing. It has a T. They look a little bit different. So this is what the trailing looks like. See how it has just no indents in there at all, and this has like a different kind of pattern, which is the leading plug, but that's why I don't want to get them mixed up, because they are different. We'll remove the wires next, and I'll lay them out on top of these plugs as well, just to show you how they actually go together. If you do mix the wires up, no big deal, just refer to this video. So looking over the driver's side, this is where the coil packs, or the coils, are here. These matter, the order matters on this. I like to put some tape on which one goes to which. If I do mix them up, or if I'm pulling them through up from the top from the bottom, or vice versa, and something happens where I forget the order, or just take them off one at a time. Put your spark plugs back on, and then do the wires. You could do that as well, but I'm taking off everything all at once just to show you guys the layout of how they should be in case someone mixes something up. There's not much to film for this part. You literally just pull the plugs up. Pretty basic. Just pull them up after you label them all. Make sure you know how they are routed. There's certain clips that kind of make everything neat, and they don't get in the way of anything. But let me pull these off, and then I'll show you what it looks like after I'm done, and then we'll throw the new plugs and the wires back on. So I labeled coil 1, 2, and 3 depending on where you're looking at. So coil 1, I'll show you over here on the car. Coil 1, just how I labeled it, nothing like, I don't know if this is coil 1 necessarily in the service manual, but from left to right I put this is coil 1, 2, 3, and 4. So coil 1, this is coil 1. It goes to the leading on the front rotor housing. Coil 2 is goes to the trailing on the front rotor housing, and then coil 3 connects to the leading in the rear, and coil 4 is the last one. So C4 goes down to the trailing in the rear rotor housing for the trailing. All right, so the next thing I'm gonna do is put these spark plugs in, and then we'll put the wires on. I'm not gonna show you how to really put the spark plugs in. I'll just give you some hints right now. Make sure that you are not touching or damaging any of the kind of electrode or anything like that. So make sure you don't bump anything. You don't need to do anything with setting the gap on these. So as soon as you take them out of the box, you're ready to put them in. So just make sure that the trailing and the leading ones, like I've explained already, are in the correct location. And if you have a torque wrench, you could do, factory service manual states 12 to 15 foot-pounds to torque them down. But what I'm gonna do, and what I've always done in the past with all spark plugs, so I hand tighten it. Once it stops, I'll go either a half to 3/4 of a turn. So if your wrench is orientated straight down, you want to go a full 180 degrees. Up top, that's another half turn, and that should be equivalent to 15 foot-pounds. You could also put some anti-seize on the threads here, but I'm not too worried about that as long as you torque them down to the correct specs. I didn't put anti-seize in the old ones when I took them out, but they were really easy to take out still. So up to you, personal preference. I'm just gonna put them in dry like this, hand tighten them, and then one full turn with the wrench, and then they'll be set. So let me do that, and I'll get back with you guys for putting the wires on. All right, the new ones are all in, so let's start putting the wires back on. Some people kind of get caught up now for when they replace these OEM wires with the NGK brand wires, just because on the NGK brand wires, they have two different colors. So one wire here, it's all blue with blue ends. They have two of those, and then they have two of the black-ended the new wires. So there's no really any difference, you can kind of tell besides the length. So I think what NGK was just going for is to save on not putting the tape, around the two that are the trailing. So originally, like I said, they have the green and blue. This one fell off the tape, but there was green and blue tape on the original spark plug wires that go to the trailing arms. So the way that these new NGK wires match up, all you have to do is just save your old wires and then match them up to the correct length. So for this purpose, I'm gonna keep the black connectors for the trailing and the blue ended new NGK wires. I'm going to be using that for the 2 leading plugs. So let's put those back on now and see if we can finally get this thing started up. I'll put a jump on the car and hopefully, you know, it can start this time. All right, guys, so they're all on. As a side note, you could put dielectric grease on inside these spark plug wires on the coil end as well as the spark plug end. Also, another note is that the coil end just slides over, pushes in. Make sure you just seat them as far down as you can. There's about a finger width gap left over. They don't make a clicking sound, but the spark plugs do. So when you're putting the wires on the spark plugs, just make sure that you hear it click when you push them on, and that's how you know they're seated. So other than that, pretty straightforward. Just make sure you route the lines. Oh, another thing, let me see if I can show you guys up here. There's a black grommet that is right down there. It's on the 2 most rearest spark plug wires. So that just keeps from hitting against the side of the block, so it just doesn't rub through. So they're just like half C's. They go right over the wire. OEM plugs should be, you should have them on there. If not, it's no big deal if you don't, but just to make it complete, try to keep those on. All right, so let me try to finally start this, and hope that's all it needs and that we don't have to go any further than that. Not looking too good. I'm gonna pull the fuel pump fuse, crank it over some more, do a little bit of mini deflood procedure and see what happens from there. All right, so I'm doing a deflood procedure now. Just quickly running over how to do this. I pulled the fuse, the 20 amp fuse that's labeled fuel pump underneath the car. Still have the battery connected to, jumping right now to the Civic. Putting the foot to the floor, cranked it over about 6 or so times, 15 seconds in between, so I didn't burn up the fuel pump, or the starter. I connected the 20 amp fuse back now, and it seems like I'm starting to get a little bit of life back to it now. So with the 20 amp fuse connected now, I am just holding my foot to the floor, cranking it, and then releasing the gas pedal right now. So let's see, it is flooded beyond belief right now. I don't know how it got this flooded. Release the gas pedal. There we go. Thank God. Let this run, burn everything off, see how bad it is. Oh man, that was flooded. let this get up to operating temperature now. Give it some gas, get all the gunk out of it. So what I think was happening was the battery was kind of weak and it just flooded it like crazy. The plugs did definitely help. It's running smoother than I remembered when I parked it. I am probably just gonna get 4 coils just to be safe. Replace all of those just because I've replaced I think 1 or 2 that I thought were acting weird in the past. So might as well replace them all 4 at one time. They're expensive, but feel bad that I let it sit this long and got this way. I did change the oil right before I put it away, but just didn't drain the gas or anything. So yeah, just make sure you upkeep everything on these cars. Letting it sit isn't good either. So I'm sure there's carbon buildup there. Gotta get out and drive it, put some load on it, clear all the carbon out that I can, and change the oil just to make sure, because I'm sure I washed the walls of the housings pretty bad. I'm gonna do a coolant change too. So yeah, I think the next video, to make sure this keeps consistently firing, especially when it's warm, I'm gonna try to do a warm start here, because that's usually the leading sign of if the engine needs rebuilt on these cars. It has a very hard time starting warm, not always, but it was just weird for me because I've never had an issue with this car starting cooled. Definitely never had an issue with this car starting warm. So that's why I definitely think it was just between poor maintenance, letting it sit, and it was just flooded. I guess it was flooded when it sat, but I never, never not let it warm up to operating temperature before I shut it off. So, I never shut it off when it's cooled. So it was kind of weird what happened there. The battery must have just been on its way out. But yep, I appreciate sticking around with this video here. This was a spark plug change and kind of what was wrong with my car, which was just flooded. But yeah, if you want to stick around till next week, I am planning on doing a coolant change. Never did a coolant change on this car either. So yep, we'll do that, and I'll show you the tips and tricks to do all that stuff. So yep, you guys have a great rest of your week, and until next time, I will see you on the next video. Brother, it's caught in the crossfire.